light skin, but black as hell, an enigma. They don't know, well, how black does she feel? How black is she? And I think they questioned her blackness to justify who she is. Like, how black are you? And they're not worried about 47%. They meant inside.
Hi, I'm Danielle Romero, and I'm so glad you're here on my channel. And today's conversation is a little unique because I normally don't touch trending topics, talking genealogy, history, things like that. If you haven't noticed, Meghan Markle has been in the news a lot. And I don't really follow the monarchy, although I'm starting to get kind of sucked into it a little bit. Something that has struck me, how often the topic turns to her race and her identity. And sometimes it's her drawing attention to it, sometimes it's the media. Kind of a great example, who's black? And are you black because you have some black ancestry? Or what does it mean to be black, especially in America? So leave me a comment below. Is Meghan Markle black or not? Let me know. We're gonna join Jeremy Simien again and ask the question, who is black?
My name is Jeremy Simien. I'm a Louisiana Creole. I'm an art and antique collector and historian, and just all around kind of a history buff. And I'm Louisiana based.
So I don't really follow the monarchy stuff, like, at all. I didn't really know who Meghan Markle was, really, but the stuff started coming into my feed because the world is obsessed with her. And I was like, I started to see headlines that actually made me pause. And it was basically about, like, is she black? Is she white? She said this, she said that. That would be a really good vehicle for talking about who is black. And I know I don't love saying black, but that is the language of the media when they're talking about her. That's what they're using. So I'm like, well, what are they talking about?
Well, I know who she is because of this obsession kind of with her race. And of course, because of some of the interesting comments that certain members of the royal family allegedly made, because it has captivated America's, and not just America, but the world, but I would say especially America's obsession with race. And I think that has been with division of this strained relationship between Prince Harry and Prince William.
Even just using the word black. But how do you think the media is using it? And what do you think they mean by that? If they're saying she's black or she's not black, like, what is black?
I think black is not white. It's the opposite of white, actually. So I think when the media uses it, they're not trying to say, "Oh, well, she's mixed. She's something else." No, they're trying to let you know she is not white, and she is on that opposite end of the spectrum, which is black, regardless of the fact that she's actually mixed race and biracial. Again, they're using these antiquated terms now. Black. You know, a lot of so-called black people don't identify as black. They would say, "No, no, no, I'm African American or I'm of African descent." And some older people would say Negro. It seems like there's a constant evolving designation for people of African descent. And I use people of African descent because I think it's important to note Africa. Africa is huge. Okay, it's the second largest continent. It's extraordinarily diverse, but I don't believe we want to believe that Africa is diverse and that black people are diverse and not a monolith, you know?
I actually pulled, I just Googled, I wasn't being picky. I just pulled three headlines that talked about her and her race. I want to read them to you, like, just the three headlines, and we can just, like, talk about them. First one, Prince Harry says Meghan Markle is, quote, not visibly black, but experienced racism from the British press. Two, Meghan Markle thought being biracial could protect her from racism. She was wrong. And three, the world is souring on Harry and Meghan. Black fans have always had mixed feelings.
Well, it's interesting because that remark or that comment came supposedly from her husband, right?
Yeah, I think it was from his book, his memoir. He said
Okay,
that.
and what maybe he was saying when we talk about passing and or racial ambiguity, where somebody could look at it and be like, is she Colombian? I wonder if she's Cuban. I wonder if she's from the West Indies." And they may not associate her as a person who would just say, "Oh, I'm an African American," or "I identify as black," or "person of African descent." And of course, she is biracial. If I remember correctly, her mother is a person of African descent. I would imagine identifies as African American, and her father is white. And so I think what he's saying is, upon the first look, you may not recognize her as somebody of African descent. And of course, the real deal is, so what? So what?
Mhm.
What does that? What does that mean? But what he's saying is, she still experienced feeling the racism and maybe those feelings of other than he's trying to explain that just because she's not of a very dark complexion and her phenotypes do not, read to most people as automatically as person of African descent or black, that she still has had encounters and feelings of otherness. So instead of saying who counts as black, maybe we should just become more conscious about not discrediting someone's blackness and also recognizing that somebody can acknowledge their blackness or their African ancestry, but not also fit into a mold that we believe is black, or a person who's black because they themselves may be proud of their African ancestry but not identify as black. And because I think Meghan Markle, she could never say, well, I think I'm white and I just have black ancestry. But there's no right answer for someone like her when the media gets involved. It's still binary when it comes to black or white. You can be anything you want to be. But if, many people still say, well, one drop and that's it. And they're not open to discussion. So, a person can be this and this. And maybe they can be this sometimes. And I'm not saying selectively a la carte, but they can be multifaceted, and depending on how the light hits, you'll see a different side of them. And I don't think we should try to immediately categorize it as, oh, that's the blackness, that's the whiteness, oh, that's something else, that's that in the gray area. People are people.
But then I really started diving in because I thought, well, has she taken a DNA test? Which again, I kind of think DNA is like, like I had a bad experience where I still have like 20% on the sign. So like who knows what I am. But
Yeah.
I didn't listen to her podcast, but I read about it in her podcast where she talked about taking it. She said she's 43% Nigerian from her
Okay,
mom.
that's
So a lot of people walking around America, they self-identify as black, or people would say that they're that or less. I mean, like the spectrum, like we can't just go by phenotype. How does someone look, right? I feel like some of the things I have read is that people almost feel like she's trying to leverage being black into some kind of victim mentality. I'm like, well, this woman's half black. Like that's what she is, but she doesn't look the way people want someone to look. What is it about her that's like so scandalous? Because I feel like it's like there's plenty of people in Hollywood that are truly biracial, and I don't feel like they get this ire from the media about their identity,
I think it is her appearance in that, when you look at her, she is kind of what I would say is racially androgynous. And I think I'm a person who, because I'm a person of African descent, and I think people of color, black people, whatever you want to call it, have a kind of a keener keen sense of what other people of color look like. And I think sometimes we see things that the average white person wouldn't see. When I see her now, I don't immediately recognize her as likely a person of African descent. Now, once when I knew that, I said, "Yeah, sure, okay, I see it." I've seen images of her mother, and her mother is what I would say is easily identifiable in public perception as black. But I think the fact that she is not, they've latched onto that. An enigma. They don't know, well, how black does she feel? How black is she? And I think they questioned her blackness in an effort to maybe kind of solicit a response from her to justify who she is. Like, how black are you? And they're not worried about 47%. They meant inside. I mean, I think Drake to connect with the younger kids, I think Drake said a lyric was, light skin but black as hell. And I think that can be a case where people, because they could be very fair complected, but they feel 100% African spirit, regardless of the fact that their mother may be white, or in this case, with Meghan Markle, her mother's of African descent.
her mom said, so I looked at a quote her mom said. Her mom's name, I think it's Doria Raglan, and she talked about how Meghan just didn't necessarily look black as a child, and people assumed that she was Meghan's nanny. That was their kind of experience. This is not a world that I didn't have these experiences, or if like people were thinking things about me, I didn't know, but I certainly wasn't having like this kind of an experience. So it's really interesting to me to even have this idea of like, mixed race families in America, like, you have to worry that people are looking and saying, well, that's not even their parents. Just these judgments about your family, right? Because you're not looking the way you want them to look. Can you share a time where you've been kind of like questioned or challenged about your racial identity like this, and how did you like how did you feel? Like, what do you remember thinking at the time that that's happening? And like, walk me through how you felt about that.
So I remember two instances, and I did not think about these beforehand, but when you just shared that, it kind of brought me. So I'll try to be careful because one instance involves family, and I don't want to involve somebody who's not in the interview. But we were on vacation, and it was three of us, one adult and two kids. I was one of the kids. We went to, believe it or not, some magic shop or something. We're kids, and I purchased some little knick-knack, and the magician was going to say, okay, now let me show you how to use it and work it and share your friends. This other child was with us who's a blood relative of ours. You can't watch this, excuse me, this is only for them. And we explained, no, this person's with us. And I remember the face of the person kind of looking, and I remember feeling uneasy about that, so much so that I had to ask this other person who was paying more attention, how do you do this trick? Because I was kind of a little thrown off by that. And that's one instance. And when it occurred to me, people see us different, see me and this other person as different than this person. And I know that other person sensed, whoa, this happens all the time. Why do they get privilege? Or why are they, you know what I mean? Another instance of this is I was with a friend of mine, and we had gone on vacation, and this is we were adults, probably 18, and I was with a family member. A lady said, "Oh, so this is your son," and pointed to my friend, thinking that my friend was, you know, was my dad's son. And my dad said, "No, that's my son." And I remember visually the woman kind of going like, "Oh." And while me and my father, I think we kind of look alike. My father has much straighter hair than I do, and is a shade or two lighter than me, and maybe different features. Me, I look more like my mother's family, and that kind of threw me off. And so I felt these kind of feelings of people kind of disassociating you with family members. There was another instance where there was actually an office party at my family's office. There was a gentleman walking or talking to a family friend, and I walked into the room and kind of said hello, and just kind of was there. And the gentleman said, well, "Can I? Do you need to ask us something? Can I help you?" He thought I was the help, and I was like, "No, actually, I'm so and so. I'm Jeremy Simien. This is my family." Oh my! This guy was kind of a big deal. I won't say his name, but a well-known person. I could tell he felt like, "Whoa." But it was funny because he was talking to a family friend who was white, and he's a white guy, and then he sees a man of color, and automatically assumes, well, he obviously must work here, or in not in the sense of working at the office, but as a caterer or something like that.
I'm hearing these, I'm realizing like you're experiencing what you would say privilege on one side, but on the other side, um, a lack of privilege. It's kind of like it
Both
depends on
sides.
who sees you, just kind of like what treatment you're gonna get, like how they're feeling that day. Just lack of consistency, I think maybe for people of mixed backgrounds where and I think you know this too, you can lean into things or you can lean away from them. So like maybe I'll post a picture. I've never posted one of this, but my natural hair. But like there's almost like we can lean into this or lean into that. Like Meghan Markle, I've saw pictures of her natural hair. You saw her with her natural hair, you don't think she's a pure white kid. She has her hair relaxed now. I don't know. Like, what do you think
Camouflage.
about that? Yeah, is it camouflage? Like, what is it? And like, sometimes it's not. Just like I like having my hair straight 'cause it's easier. It's hard for me to do my hair, but it changes how people respond to you and how they see you.
Some people saying, you're trying to camouflage who you are, and then I could see the other side of that. It's like, no, you like the way that looks, because I don't think it's a secret that many people of African descent do put products in their hair. If we flip the coin, we see quite a number of people of European descent go into these tanning beds, right? So it's kind of strange how we both want to look a certain way, but nobody wants to be treated lesser because of our looks. I like what you said about leaning in because I've felt that before. There are moments when I am a recipient of privilege. I remember going to an antique store with my family member and picked up a book on Louisiana history, plantations. And the lady said, "Where are y'all from?" And this was out of state. And I said, "Well, I'm from Louisiana, Baton Rouge." This was nearby, it's in Mississippi. And I said, "What about you?" "Well, I'm from Louisiana, but we moved once the schools integrated." She felt comfortable telling me that and telling, and I, I assume now that she thought, huh, well, they're not black. They might be some, but they're not the people I'm about to talk about. And she felt comfortable saying that. And so I would say that a person like Meghan Markle, who has obviously probably experienced that, where you're like, you want to say something. And I've heard this phrase before, incognito, where it's kind of yeah, incognito. I think it's also an album, a ludicrous album. I've seen where somebody has used it and it's personal to them because they're mixed race, they're biracial, and they use that term. They're incognito, meaning incognito, not easily spotted and kind of undercover, if you will. And I think I think if you look mixed race, depending on your audience, depending on where you are, and people have said this to me, like, "Oh, well, if you're outside of Louisiana, you wouldn't be black of all this and that." I was like, "Well, wherever I am, I'm who I am." Period. I don't know. Maybe you're what you're saying. Society would see you as this or that and this and that. I really don't care. I can only be me. But at the same time, I think there is that kind of pressure to sometimes conform to society's expectation. And I think with mixed race people, that is tricky. And it's got to be incredibly tricky to be under in the public eye, and then and not just in the public eye, but aligned with the monarchy and this old institution, and be incognito.
And it's like, like you're saying, and maybe in some places, one might see more of a person of color than others. It does put the spotlight in a really serious way. And I think when you're talking about the way the kids look, I think that's something that resonated with me because I have three kids and they look different. If that's something that has come up for you, because you're a father, um, what it looks like with the kids and what people want your kid to look like and what they don't want, and why does that even matter? Like,
Well, you know what? I got to be honest. I mean, my child looks kind of just like me. I mean, he really does. I mean, he has maybe a little lighter hair, obviously, and he's also a baby. But he and his skin tone maybe a little more olive or whatever. But my wife has Acadian ancestry and has French ancestry and some of these old Louisiana ingredients that are in my ancestry. But I think we all worry how our child will be received by society regardless of the complexion, right? But I think when complexion is a component in that, where you're like, oh God, is it going to look more like this or that? You worry about the treatment because you want the best for your child, right? And I don't know if I worry too much about it with my own child. I'm happy to say I think my child looks like me, and I'm confident that he'll be accepted by whoever he needs to be accepted by, and he won't be accepted by the people who are not for him. And that's okay. But I think some people don't have that luxury. A lot of interracial marriages and a lot of interracial unions now. So it is strange that I think when we talk about Meghan Markle, I think there's an interesting dynamic here that it's not a black father, it's a white father. And I do believe that that's why this is, in society's eyes, sometimes more acceptable. I think people have still a stigma on black father, white mother.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Like I said, I'm totally outsider coming in, trying to learn the ropes, and I think it's making me extra sensitive to like how do we? I mean, this is stuff everybody who's been living a life as a person of color, like they didn't have to be told, hey, sit down and think about this because it's kind of like your experience. But like for me, I'm trying to just soak in. Okay, so this is how the world really is with this. But like, really, I think there's a lesson here. What do you think it is?
I think the lesson is that I think black women and women of African descent are very susceptible and vulnerable to slander by the media. And I think that we've become comfortable with ideas that are presented by film and media. I've noticed in films and movies, the black female is always over sexualized, seen as impulsive, angry. And I wonder if their constant reminder that this woman is not white has led to people attributing these things. Oh, she's divisive. She's a problem. Angry black woman. And so I think that's what's at play here is these stigmas that have been presented for years and years and years by Hollywood and also by media. And I think it bubbles up to the surface always, and we assign these things, even if we're trying not to be biased. I mean, you can read the bias in the headlines. They won't let you forget that she's not a woman, but a black woman.
Because I don't think it's bad to be identified with your background, right? Like we're proud of our background and we love it and we want to talk about it. But when it's weaponized with that, you
I
know.
think we have to call it out, like you just said something that was brilliant, about when it's weaponized. They've weaponized this woman's race. They're not using this to champion and talk about how inclusive the royal family is and how far, Britain has, come. I'm hoping the world will continue to progress. Maybe we're just starting to see that. Maybe that's the future.
It's really great to do this in a public way, not have all the answers, but still ask some of the questions.